Story. Scene 1. Shattered Anniversary. Elias Thorne stood motionless in his penthouse apartment, his steel-gray eyes fixed on the meticulously arranged anniversary dinner table. 25 years of marriage reflected in the gleam of fine china and crystal glasses. The bottle of 1982 Lafite Rothschild, Vivian's favorite, waited unopened, a silent testament to his attention to detail. At precisely 7 o'clock, the elevator doors opened. Vivian's Louboutin heels clicked against the marble floor, each step deliberate and final. She wore a new Oscar de la Renta dress, price tag still attached, a detail that didn't escape Elias's notice. "Really, Elias?" Vivian's voice dripped with disdain as she surveyed the setup. "You thought we'd have a romantic dinner?" Elias maintained his composure, studying his wife's face. The face he'd woken up to for 25 years now held nothing but contempt. "I thought we could discuss things civilly." Vivian laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. She reached into her designer handbag and pulled out a thick envelope. "There's nothing to discuss." She tossed the envelope onto the table, scattering the rose petals Elias had carefully arranged. "Happy anniversary, darling." Elias picked up the envelope, his movements measured and controlled. Inside were divorce papers, meticulously prepared and waiting for his signature. He scanned the documents, his expression unchanging. "You didn't think I'd stay with a small-time financial analyst forever, did you?" Vivian moved to the bar, helping herself to a glass of champagne. "Julian's Manhattan mansion makes this place look like a storage unit." "Julian Ramsey," Elias said quietly, still reading the papers. "CEO of Ramsey Dynamics. Quite the upgrade." "Oh, you have no idea." Vivian smiled, twirling her glass. "We've been together for over a year now. He knows how to treat a woman of my caliber." She paused, savoring her next words. "And he's helped me make some very smart financial decisions." Elias finally looked up from the papers. "The joint accounts. All legally transferred, darling. Check page 6. Vivian's smile widened. "Julian's lawyers are excellent. You'll find everything's perfectly in order." A memory flashed through Elias's mind. His first day as a junior broker, analyzing market trends until his eyes burned, identifying patterns others missed. The same patterns that had built his fortune, the fortune Vivian had just attempted to dismantle. "You've been busy," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "Someone had to be. God knows you were always too wrapped up in your pathetic little market analyses." Vivian drained her glass. "Do you know what Julian said when I told him about your anniversary plans?" He laughed. Actually laughed. Elias placed the papers back on the table. "And what else does Julian find amusing?" "Everything about you, darling. Your sad little attempts at being a big player in the financial world. Your obsession with control." She walked closer, her perfume, new, expensive, unfamiliar, filling the air between them. "You want to know the best part? While you were busy playing with your spreadsheets, Julian and I were planning our future. In your bed most of the time." Elias remained still, his face a mask of indifference. But behind his eyes, something dark and calculating stirred. "Nothing to say?" Vivian taunted. "No tearful pleas? No angry outbursts? God, you're pathetic." She grabbed her back. "Julian's waiting for me. Enjoy your sad little life, loser." As Vivian turned to leave, she missed the slight smile that crossed Elias's face. A smile that would have given her pause had she seen it. A smile that spoke of knowledge, of plans already in motion. The elevator doors closed behind her, and Elias walked to his study. He opened his laptop and clicked on a folder labeled Insurance. Inside were hundreds of photographs. Vivian entering Julian's office at odd hours, their secret meetings, their not-so-discreet exchanges in various locations, all meticulously dated and cataloged. He opened another folder, financial records, transaction histories, corporate documents. Every move Vivian and Julian had made, tracked and analyzed. The private investigators' reports were thorough, dating back months. But they were merely confirmation of what Elias had already suspected. His phone buzzed, a text from Mac. "Everything in place?" Elias typed back. "Proceeding as planned." He closed the laptop and returned to the dining room. The divorce papers lay where Vivian had thrown them, her final act of disrespect. Elias picked them up, straightened the pages, and placed them carefully in his briefcase. Another memory surfaced. His first major market prediction, the one that had set him on his path to wealth. He'd seen the pattern when no one else had moved his assets at precisely the right moment. The same skills that had made him rich would now serve a different purpose. Elias looked at his reflection in the window. The man staring back wasn't defeated. He was awakened. Vivian had made a fatal mistake. She'd assumed his quiet nature meant weakness. She'd mistaken his patience for passivity. She would learn, as others had before her, that still waters run deep and dangerous. Scene 2. The Shadow Owner. Mac Riley stood in Elias's private office, watching his friend and employer arrange documents on his desk. The space reflected its owner, precise, organized, purposeful. Every item had its place, every document its significance. They cleared out the accounts? Mac asked, his voice tight with controlled anger. Most of them, Elias replied, his tone casual. The ones Vivian knew about. Mac's eyes narrowed. The ones she knew about? Elias looked up, a predatory gleam in his eyes. Did you really think I'd keep all my assets and accounts accessible to her? You know me better than that, Mac. How long have you known about the affair? 7 months, 2 weeks, and 3 days. Elias pulled up a series of documents on his computer. The exact duration of Operation Shadow. Mac moved closer to the desk. Operation Shadow? Take a look. Elias turned the screen toward Mac. Mac's eyes widened as he scanned the documents. Ownership records, shell companies, proxy shareholders, a complex web of financial maneuvers that all led to one conclusion. Jesus Christ, Elias, Mac whispered. You own Ramsey Dynamics? 51% controlling interest, Elias confirmed. Acquired through various shell companies over the past 2 years. Julian's ego made it easy. He never bothered to look closely at his institutional investors, but the cost, the logistics, penny I could spare, contact I've cultivated, favor I could call in. Elias's voice remained steady. While Julian was sleeping with my wife, I was buying his company out from under him, piece by piece. Max sank into a chair. Does anyone else know? Only my lawyers, and they're well paid for their discretion. Elias stood and walked to the window. Julian thinks he's taking everything from me. He has no idea he's been dancing to my tune for months. A knock at the door interrupted them. Elias's assistant entered. Sir, Detective Diaz is here for your appointment. Perfect timing, Elias murmured. Send her in. Detective Isabella Diaz entered the office with the confident stride of someone used to commanding respect. Her sharp eyes took in every detail of the room before settling on Elias. Mr. Thorne, she said, extending her hand. Thank you for meeting with me. Please have a seat. Elias gestured to a chair. This is Marcus Riley, my associate. Detective, Mac nodded. I'm investigating some allegations regarding Ramsey Dynamics, Diaz began, pulling out a notebook. Given your personal connection to the situation, I hoped you might have some insights. Elias's expression shifted subtly, vulnerability replacing his usual mask of control. Personal connection? Ah, you mean my wife's affair with Julian Ramsey? Diaz watched him carefully. Ex-wife now, I understand. As of today? Yes, Elias's voice cracked slightly. 25 years of marriage, ended with divorce papers on our anniversary. Quite the dramatic timing, wouldn't you say? Mr. Thorne, I'm more interested in any knowledge you might have of Ramsey Dynamics business practices. Detective, until today, my only concern was trying to save my marriage. Elias ran a hand through his hair, the perfect picture of a man struggling with personal tragedy. I'm afraid I wasn't paying much attention to Julian Ramsey's business dealings. Mac watched the performance with hidden admiration. Gesture, word was calculated to present the image of a broken man, too consumed by personal pain to be capable of corporate manipulation. We've received reports of irregular financial activities, Diaz pressed. Large sums moving through unusual channels. That would be my wife's work, Elias said bitterly. She's cleared out our joint accounts. But I assume that's not what you're investigating. Diaz made a note. No, this goes deeper. There are suggestions of systematic fraud within the company structure itself. How unfortunate, Elias murmured. Though I suppose a man capable of destroying a marriage wouldn't hesitate to bend other rules as well. The detective studied him for a long moment. Mr. Thorne, if you think of anything that might be relevant to our investigation, please contact me. She handed him her card. After Diaz left, Mac turned to Elias. She suspects something. Of course she does. She's good at her job. Elias picked up the detective's card. And she'll be very useful when the time comes. The anonymous tip? One of many breadcrumbs I've arranged. Elias smiled. Julian's own records will condemn him. I've just made sure the right people are looking in the right places. Mac shook his head in amazement. You've thought of everything. When you hunt a predator, Mac, you have to think like one. Elias pulled up another set of documents. Now, let's review the next phase. Julian's about to make a crucial mistake, and we need to be ready. Scene 3, The Gathering Storm. Julian Ramsey stood at his office window, admiring his reflection in the glass. His custom Tom Ford suit fit perfectly, a visual reminder of his success. Behind him, Vivian lounged on his leather sofa, scrolling through luxury real estate listings on her iPad. The Hamilton estate is having an open house next weekend, she said. 12 bedrooms, indoor pool, private tennis court. Perfect for our housewarming party. Julian smiled indulgently. Thinking big, aren't we? Always. Vivian set down the iPad. You should see Elias's face when I dropped the divorce papers. Complete shock. He actually had dinner prepared. Can you believe it? Candles, roses, the whole pathetic display. Amateur, Julian scoffed. Speaking of amateurs, how much did you manage to transfer? Everything in the joint accounts. Vivian's smile was triumphant. Your lawyers were right. He never saw it coming. Too busy with his precious market analyses to notice what was happening right under his nose. A knock at the door interrupted them. Bernard Walsh, Julian's CFO, entered looking concerned. Julian, we need to talk. Walsh glanced at Vivian. Privately, anything you need to say, you can say in front of Vivian, Julian declared. She'll be my wife soon enough. Walsh hesitated. Sir, we're seeing some unusual movement from our major institutional investors. They're asking questions about our Q3 projections. Questions? Julian's tone sharpened. What kind of questions? About our revenue streams, our subsidiary operations. Very specific questions. Handle it, Julian snapped. That's what I pay you for. Sir, with all due respect, these aren't regular inquiries. Someone's been feeding them information. Detailed information. Vivian sat up straighter, suddenly alert. What kind of information? Financial records that shouldn't be accessible to outsiders. Transaction histories that suggest... Walsh trailed off. Suggest what? Julian demanded. Irregularities, sir. The kind that could attract unwanted attention. Julian's face darkened. Are you implying something about my business practices, Bernard? No, sir. I'm saying someone else is. Walsh placed a folder on the desk. These documents were anonymously sent to several of our major shareholders. Julian snatched up the folder, his face growing redder as he read. This is impossible. These records are sealed. Nobody has access to this information. Apparently, somebody does, Walsh said quietly. Find out who, Julian growled, and shut them down, whatever it costs. After Walsh left, Vivian moved to Julian's side. What does this mean? It means we need to move faster. Julian reached for his phone. Get the IPO team in here. We're going public ahead of schedule. Is that wise? Vivian asked. If there are questions about the company's finances, it's perfect timing, Julian insisted. Once we're public, these records become old news. We'll have fresh capital, new investors. Anyone questioning our past dealings will be drowned out by our future success. Neither of them noticed the tiny red light blinking on Julian's desk phone, transmitting every word to a secure server in Elias's office. Later that evening, Detective Diaz sat at her desk, reviewing financial documents. The anonymous tips had started arriving 3 months ago. each one more detailed than the last, each pointing to specific irregularities in Ramsey Dynamics operations. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Check the offshore transfers for March 15th. Diaz pulled up the relevant files. There it was, a series of transactions that made no business sense unless... Her eyes widened as she connected the dots. "Got you," she whispered, unaware that she was playing her part in a much larger game. In his own office, Elias watched multiple screens displaying surveillance feeds from Julian's office, financial data streams, and Detective Diaz's case notes, all obtained through carefully cultivated sources. "Their arrogance makes them careless," he commented to Mac, who stood nearby. "Julian's rushing the IPO, just as we predicted, and Vivian still thinks she's won." Elias's smile was cold. "Let them celebrate while they can. The storm is about to break, and they don't even see it coming." The pieces were in place. The trap was set. All that remained was to watch his enemies walk into it, their own hubris leading them to their destruction. Elias had learned long ago that revenge, like any successful investment, required patience, planning, and perfect timing. And he had all three in abundance. Scene 4. The Crushing Blow. The boardroom of Ramsey Dynamics buzzed with anticipation. Julian Ramsey stood at the head of the mahogany table, his expensive suit and confident smile projecting the image of a man in complete control. Board members and major investors filled the seats, their attention focused on the presentation screen displaying the IPO proposal. "Ladies and gentlemen," Julian began, "today marks the beginning of a new era for Ramsey Dynamics. Our decision to go public will position us as..." "Mr. Ramsey," Bernard Walsh interrupted, handing him a note. "There's something urgent you need to see." Julian's smile faltered slightly as he read the message. "Perhaps we should take a brief recess." The boardroom doors opened. Mac Riley entered, followed by a team of lawyers carrying document boxes. "Please continue, Mr. Ramsey," Mac said, his voice carrying across the room. "This won't take long." Julian's eyes narrowed. "This is a private meeting. Security." "Security won't be necessary," Mac replied, placing a thick folder on the table. "I'm here representing the majority shareholder of Ramsey Dynamics." Murmurs rippled through the room. Julian laughed, but there was an edge to it. "I am the majority shareholder." "No, Mr. Ramsey." Mac distributed documents to each board member. "You own 37% of Ramsey Dynamics. The remaining shares are distributed among various institutional investors, or so you believed." Julian snatched a document, his face reddening as he read. "This is impossible." Over the past 2 years, Mac continued, addressing the board, these supposedly independent investment groups have been systematically acquired by Shell Corporation Alpha, which is itself owned by Vertex Holdings, which, through a series of subsidiary companies, is controlled by... The presentation screen flickered to life. Elias Thorne's face appeared, his expression calm and focused. "Hello, Julian." Julian stumbled backward. "You? This is some kind of trick." "The only trick," Elias said, his voice filling the room, "was making you believe you were untouchable. Share purchase, proxy vote, board appointment, all orchestrated to bring us to this moment. You can't do this." Julian shouted. "I built this company." "And I bought it," Elias replied. "Legally. Systematically. While you were busy stealing my wife, I was acquiring your life's work, piece by piece." The board members exchanged glances, papers rustling as they reviewed the documentation. "This is all perfectly legal," one of the lawyers confirmed. "Mr. Thorne owns 51% of Ramsey Dynamics through various shell corporations. All proper procedures were followed." Julian spun toward the board members. "You can't let him do this. I made you all rich." "Mr. Ramsey," a senior board member spoke up, "these documents also show concerning irregularities in the company's financial records. Irregularities that will be thoroughly investigated," Mac added, "along with certain offshore accounts that might interest the SEC." Julian's face went pale. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Elias's voice was steel-wrapped in silk. "Check your phone, Julian. The FBI is currently executing search warrants at your private office and residence." As if on cue, Julian's phone buzzed with multiple messages. His hands shook as he read them. "You've lost, Julian," Elias continued. The company, the mansion, everything you built on lies and betrayal. Consider it the price of stealing what's mine. I'll fight this, Julian snarled. I'll tie you up in court for years. With what money? Elias asked. Your personal accounts have been frozen pending investigation. Every lawyer in New York has been contacted and warned that representing you would be unwise. Face it, Julian, you're finished. In the back of the boardroom, Detective Diaz watched silently, her notebook forgotten in her hand. The pieces were falling into place. The anonymous tips, the financial irregularities, the perfectly timed revelations. She'd been playing a part in someone else's game all along. Mr. Ramsey, Max said, security will escort you from the building. Your access has been revoked, and your personal items will be shipped to wherever you end up. Julian looked around the room, finding no allies among the faces he'd once commanded. His empire was crumbling, and the architect of his destruction wasn't even there to witness it in person. Vivian, he gasped. I need to warn. Ms. Sterling's access has also been revoked, Mac informed him. I believe she's about to receive some rather unpleasant news of her own. As security led Julian away, his protests echoing down the corridor, Mac turned to address the board. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Thorne has prepared a detailed presentation on the company's new direction. Shall we begin? Scene 5. The Price of Pride. Julian's Manhattan mansion hummed with activity, but not the kind its owner had ever envisioned. Security teams changed locks while forensic accountants boxed documents. Vivian Sterling stood in the grand foyer, her designer outfit clashing with the chaos around her. You can't do this, she repeated, clutching her Hermes bag like a shield. This is my home. Actually, Mrs. Sterling, the head of security, consulted his tablet. According to property records, this house belongs to Vertex Holdings, a subsidiary of... I know who owns it. Vivian snapped. Where's Julian? He'll sort this out. Mr. Ramsey is currently unavailable, the security chief replied. And you have 30 minutes to collect essential personal items. The rest will be inventoried and stored pending legal resolution. Vivian's phone buzzed. The message from her bank made her blood run cold. My accounts, they're frozen. All of them. Mrs. Sterling? A man in a suit approached, holding a document. I represent the law firm handling your divorce settlement. Given recent developments, Mr. Thorne is exercising his right to contest the financial terms. All assets are frozen pending review. He can't do that. Vivian's voice rose to a shriek. I earned that money. By draining joint accounts without disclosure? The lawyer raised an eyebrow. The courts may see it differently. Also, given Mr. Ramsey's legal situation, any assets transferred from him to you are subject to investigation. Vivian's designer heels clicked across the marble floor as she paced. I need to call my lawyer. Your lawyer's firm has withdrawn representation, the man informed her. Something about a conflict of interest. In his home office, Elias watched the scene unfold on multiple screens. Max stood beside him, reading reports from the takeover team. Julian's being processed by the FBI, Mac reported. The evidence was overwhelming once they knew where to look. His lawyers are abandoning him faster than rats from a sinking ship. And Vivian? Complete asset freeze. No access to accounts, credit cards canceled, all property seized pending investigation. She's got whatever cash is in her purse and the clothes on her back. Elias nodded. What about the job arrangements? Done. Julian's Uber application has been approved. It's the only job he'll be able to get with his reputation in tatters. And Vivian's position at the mall clothing store starts Monday. Minimum wage, of course. Perfect. Elias's smile was cold. Let them experience life without their precious status. Let them know what it's like to struggle, to be looked down upon. On the screen, Vivian was being escorted to the street, her protests falling on deaf ears. Her phone rang, Julian, calling from a borrowed phone after his release from FBI questioning. Julian, they're taking everything. It's gone, Vivian. Julian's voice cracked. The company, the money, everything. Elias. He planned this all along. Fix this, Vivian demanded. You promised me a life of luxury. I can't. I can't even afford a hotel room. My cards are all declined. I'm calling from a payphone. The line went dead. Vivian stood on the sidewalk, her world collapsing around her. A passing taxi splashed water on her designer shoes, shoes she'd bought with money stolen from her ex-husband, money she'd never have again. In his office, Elias watched her distress with detachment. Send her the job offer, he instructed Mac. Make it clear it's the only position she'll be able to get in this city. You're not just taking their money, Mac observed. You're making them live like the people they looked down on. They chose this, Elias replied. Betrayal, cruel word. Moment they spent mocking what they called my pathetic life. They chose it all. Now they can live with those choices. The security feed showed Vivian trying to book a hotel room, her frustration growing as card after card was declined. Finally, she called the one person she thought might help her sister. Sophie? I need a place to stay. Sophie? Sophie, don't hang up. But the line was already dead. Elias had been thorough. Everyone in Vivian's social circle had been quietly informed of her situation. No one wanted to risk their own status by associating with her. Where will they go? Mac asked. Julian has a cousin in Queens who might take him in, Elias said. And Vivian? Well, there's always the subway. The security feeds showed the final stages of the takeover. Julian's personal items were being boxed, his life reduced to inventory lists. Vivian's closet was being cataloged, her precious designer collection tagged and bagged as potential evidence. Should we tell them about the criminal charges yet? Mac asked. Not yet, Elias replied. Let them think this is the bottom. When the indictments come down next week, it'll hurt that much more. Scene 6. A New Beginning. The Manhattan mansion stood transformed. Gone were the gaudy displays of wealth that had marked Julian and Vivian's residence. The space now radiated warmth and purpose, its luxury redirected toward comfort rather than ostentation. Clara Monroe moved through the rooms with quiet authority, directing contractors and organizers. Each space was being repurposed with clear intent: dormitories for single mothers, childcare facilities, educational spaces. The security system needs to be top-notch, she instructed the installation team. Many of our residents will be escaping difficult situations. They need to feel safe here. A young woman with a small child approached tentatively. Ms. Monroe? I'm Teresa Bellwether, Tess. The agency sent me? Clara turned, her face warming with a genuine smile. Of course. Welcome, Tess. And who's this little one? This is Emma, Tess replied, her daughter hiding behind her legs. We really appreciate this opportunity. Please, come see your space. Clara led them toward the residential wing. Each unit has its own bathroom and kitchenette. We provide childcare while mothers are working or studying, and there's a communal dining area for those who want to share meals. As they walked, Tessa's eyes widened at the facility's scope. This must have cost a fortune to set up. The owner believes in giving people second chances, Clara replied. Sometimes life takes unexpected turns, and everyone deserves support while they rebuild. In his private office, Elias watched the interaction on his security feed, his expression unreadable. Mac entered with fresh reports. Julian's first day as an Uber driver was interesting, Mac said. 3 one-star reviews already. Apparently, he's not good at taking orders from passengers. And Vivian? Started her mall job today. Had a meltdown when a customer demanded to speak to her manager. Security had to intervene. Elias nodded, his attention returning to the screen where Clara was showing Tess the childcare facility. The shelter's security? State-of-the-art, Mac confirmed. Full coverage, facial recognition, panic buttons in every room. Nobody gets in without proper clearance. Good. Elias's voice softened slightly. These women have been through enough. They deserve to feel safe. A new figure appeared on the security feed, Detective Diaz, arriving for what appeared to be a casual visit. She and Clara greeted each other warmly, clearly building a friendship. Izzy. Perfect timing, Clara said. We're just showing our newest resident around. This is Tess and Emma. Detective Diaz smiled at the child. Hi, Emma. I'm Izzy. You know what I do. I help people who are having problems. Like a superhero? Emma asked, peeking out from behind her mother. Something like that. Izzy laughed. Sometimes people need someone to stand up for them, to make things right. Clara led them to the dining area, where other mothers and children were gathering for lunch. The space buzzed with conversation and laughter, a far cry from the cold, formal dinners Julian and Vivian had hosted. "It's amazing," Izzy said to Clara as they watched the families interact. "But I have to ask, the owner of this place, turning a mansion into a shelter? That's not something you see every day." "No," Clara agreed. "I suppose some people believe in justice taking different forms." Izzy's eyes narrowed slightly at Clara's choice of words. In her mind, pieces of a puzzle were shifting, forming a new picture. Back in his office, Elias watched the detective's thoughtful expression. "She's figuring it out," he told Mac. "Is that a problem?" "No," Elias replied. "Detective Diaz understands that justice and law aren't always the same thing. She's seen enough victims of circumstance to know that sometimes balance must be restored through other means." The security feed showed Clara saying goodbye to Izzy, then returning to help Tess and Emma settle into their new home. The contrast between the mansion's past and present struck a chord even in Elias's carefully controlled heart. "Sir," Mac hesitated. "About Vivian's request to volunteer at the shelter." "Absolutely not." Elias's voice turned to ice. "She doesn't get to ease her conscience by playing savior to these women. Let her learn what it really means to struggle, to be judged, to be found wanting. Some debts can never be repaid." Through the cameras, he watched Clara organizing an orientation session for new residents, her natural empathy drawing out even the most hesitant participants. She was everything Vivian wasn't: genuine, compassionate, focused on others rather than herself. "The foundation paperwork is ready," Mac reported. "Once you sign, the shelter becomes a permanent institution, with guaranteed funding." Elias nodded. "Make it happen. These women deserve more than temporary sanctuary. They deserve a real chance to rebuild their lives." The security feed showed Emma finally emerging from her shell, playing with other children in the newly established playroom. Tess watched, tears in her eyes, as her daughter laughed for the first time in months. "Sometimes," Elias murmured, "destruction can lead to creation. They destroyed what I had, so I destroyed what they had. But from those ashes, something better can rise." Mac understood. This wasn't just revenge, it was reconstruction. For every life Vivian and Julian had carelessly damaged, Elias would help another heal. The scales of justice, balanced in his own particular way. Scene 7. Unveiled Truths. Clara Monroe sat in her office at the women's shelter, reviewing donation records when a familiar name caught her eye. She clicked through several files, each revelation adding to her growing suspicion. The shelter's property records, the funding sources, the timing of the acquisition, all led back to one conclusion. She gathered the documents and headed to Elias's office, where he and Mac were discussing the shelter's security upgrades. Both men looked up as she entered, Mac immediately noting her expression. "I'll give you two some privacy," Mac said, moving toward the door. "Stay," Clara commanded, her voice firm. "I think you're part of this story too, Mac." She laid the documents on Elias's desk. This mansion belonged to Julian Ramsey and Vivian Sterling before it became a shelter. The same Julian Ramsey whose company collapsed in a takeover scandal. The same Vivian Sterling who, according to these marriage records, was once Vivian Thorne. Elias studied her face, his expression unchanging. "You've been investigating." "I'm thorough," Clara replied. "Something Detective Diaz said made me curious. About justice taking different forms. And what have you concluded?" Elias's voice remained steady. "That my husband is either the most calculating revenge artist I've ever encountered, or the most strategic philanthropist." Clara spread out the papers. "The timing is too perfect. The shelter's establishment coincides exactly with Ramsey Dynamics' collapse. The property transfer, the funding structure. It's all connected." Mac shifted uncomfortably, but Elias raised a hand. "She deserves the truth, Mac." He turned to Clara. "What else have you discovered? Vivian was your wife of 25 years. She had an affair with Julian Ramsey, tried to ruin you financially, but you'd already outmaneuvered them. You owned Ramsey Dynamics through shell companies, orchestrated their downfall. Is that all?" "No." Clara's eyes narrowed. "You arranged their current situations. Julian driving for Uber, Vivian working retail. That's not coincidence, that's design. You stripped them of everything they valued. Status, wealth, power. Elias stood and walked to a wall safe. He entered a code and removed a thick file. You want the whole truth? Here it is. For the next hour, he laid out the complete story. The anniversary dinner, the divorce papers, the calculated betrayal. He showed her surveillance photos, financial records, the entire architecture of his revenge. You planned this for years, Clara said quietly. The moment I suspected their affair, I began preparing. Not just to destroy them, but to ensure they'd never recover. Elias's voice carried no remorse. They thought I was weak, pathetic. They believed their status made them untouchable. And now? Now they understand true weakness, true humiliation. He met her gaze. I don't expect you to approve. I don't need to approve or disapprove, Clara interrupted. I need to understand. Show me everything, Elias. No filters, no omissions. Mac retrieved more files, and Elias continued his explanation. He detailed the manipulation of investors, the strategic leaks to Detective Diaz, the careful dismantling of Julian and Vivian's social networks. You didn't just take their money, Clara observed. You isolated them, made sure no one would help them rebuild. They chose their path, Elias replied. Cruel word, betrayal. Those were their choices. I simply ensured they'd face the consequences. And the shelter? Was that part of your revenge too? No. For the first time, Elias's voice softened slightly. That was you. Your vision. I merely provided the means. Clara absorbed this, her mind working through implications. The women we help here, many of them have stories like yours. Betrayal, manipulation, abuse of trust. Yes. So this isn't just revenge. It's restoration. She gestured to the shelter plants. For every life they damaged, we're helping another heal. Elias studied her face. Does this change things between us? You think I'm horrified by your capacity for revenge? Clara smiled grimly. I've worked with abuse survivors for years, Elias. I understand the difference between cruelty and justice. She stood and gathered the documents. But I need to know one thing. Are we done with the past? Or is there more to come? The foundation paperwork is being finalized, Elias replied. The shelter will be permanent, with guaranteed funding. Beyond that, he shrugged. Julian and Vivian made their choices. They can live with the consequences. Clara nodded slowly. Then let's focus on the future. But no more secrets, Elias. I'm not Vivian. I won't be managed or manipulated. No, Elias agreed, his eyes meeting hers. You never could be. Scene 8. Forgiveness and Closure. The shelter's main hall buzzed with activity as Tess coordinated the afternoon support group meeting. New residents were settling in, children played in the supervised care area, and Clara moved through it all with quiet authority. The security system chimed, alerting them to a visitor. On the monitor, Vivian Sterling stood at the gate, her mall uniform a stark contrast to her former designer wardrobe. Ma'am, the security guard's voice crackled over the intercom. This is a private facility. You need authorization. Please, Vivian's voice had lost its aristocratic polish. I just want to talk to Clara Monroe. Or Elias. Please. Clara watched the monitor, noting the changes in the woman who had once sneered at ordinary people. Months of minimum wage work had stripped away her arrogance, replaced it with something approaching humility. Let her wait, Elias said from behind Clara. She hadn't heard him approach. She looks different, Clara observed. Poverty has that effect. No sympathy softened Elias's voice, especially on those who once despised it. They watched as Vivian shifted nervously at the gate. Her hair was simply styled now, her makeup minimal. The designer bags under her eyes couldn't be concealed. I want to hear what she has to say, Clara decided. Elias's jaw tightened. She's manipulative. I'm not you, Clara reminded him. I won't be fooled by false remorse. She pressed the intercom. Security, escort her to my office. Full protocol. Vivian was searched and scanned before being led through the shelter. Her eyes darted around, taking in the transformed spaces where she'd once hosted lavish parties. In Clara's office, She perched uncertainly on a chair. Thank you for seeing me. I've been trying to find a way to talk to someone. Why are you here, Vivian? Clara kept her voice neutral. I've seen the women who come here. Their stories. Vivian twisted her hands. I want to help. Volunteer. Maybe. Try to make amends.
No.
Elias stepped from the shadows, making Vivian flinch. You don't get to ease your conscience here. Elias, please. Vivian's voice cracked. I know what I did was unforgivable. Correct. His tone could have frozen fire. You and Julian didn't just betray me. You mocked me, called my life pathetic while you plotted to steal it. I was wrong. Tears spilled down Vivian's cheeks. I see that now. Working at the mall, living in that tiny apartment, I understand what real struggle is. No, Elias corrected her. You understand consequences. There's a difference. Clara watched the exchange silently, noting how Vivian's shoulders hunched under Elias's cold gaze. The women here, Elias continued, are survivors fighting to rebuild their lives. They don't need the entertainment of watching you perform public penance. That's not what this is, Vivian protested weakly. Isn't it? Clara spoke up. You were happy enough in your retail job when you thought no one was watching. It's only now, knowing about the shelter, that you suddenly feel charitable. Vivian's face crumpled. I need something. Some purpose. Julian's in prison. My friends won't speak to me, my family. Your choices, Elias reminded her. Your consequences. How long? Vivian whispered. How long do I have to pay? That's the thing about consequences, Vivian. Elias moved to stand behind Clara's chair. They're not punishment. They're reality. This is your life now. Accept it. Clara leaned forward. The women here aren't a prop for your redemption story. They're rebuilding their lives with dignity and courage, qualities you might want to consider developing. Security escorted Vivian out. Through the monitors, they watched her walk away, shoulders slumped in defeat. You're still angry, Clara observed to Elias. Not angry. Resolved. He touched her shoulder lightly. Some debts can't be repaid. Some trust can't be rebuilt. Tess appeared in the doorway. Clara? The new residents are ready for orientation. Clara stood. Coming. She turned to Elias. The past is done. Let's focus on those we can actually help. Scene 9. The Phoenix rises. Elias's home office had become something of a command center. One wall displayed shelter statistics, occupancy rates, success stories, employment numbers. Another showed Ramsey Dynamics' transformation under new management, its resources redirected toward ethical ventures. Clara entered with coffee and foundation documents. The board approved everything. The shelter's funding is guaranteed for the next 20 years. Good. Elias signed the papers without hesitation. What about the expansion plans? 3 new locations identified. Clara pulled up the proposals. All in areas with high needs, good access to resources. Mac arrived with more reports. Julian's appeal was denied. He'll serve his full sentence. And Vivian? Still at the mall. Her manager says she's actually becoming a decent employee. Less entitled. Elias nodded, unsurprised. The foundation structure? Ironclad, Clara confirmed. Even if something happened to us, the shelters would continue. The women we help will always have support. She studied her husband's face. You've thought about this, haven't you? Making sure your revenge created something lasting? The best revenge isn't destruction, Elias replied. It's transformation. They tried to destroy what I built. I used that to build something better. Speaking of building, Clara pulled out another document. I was thinking, we've been so focused on work. Maybe it's time for a break. Elias raised an eyebrow. A break? 2 weeks. Just us. Somewhere without spreadsheets or security feeds. The shelter is running perfectly. Tess has really stepped up as coordinator. Mac can handle any emergencies. Clara perched on his desk. We've built something amazing here, but we deserve time to enjoy it. Elias was quiet for a moment. Where would you want to go? Anywhere. Everywhere. Clara smiled. We've spent so much time helping others rebuild. Maybe we should focus on building our own happiness too. I am happy, Elias said simply. This work, this life with you. It's more than revenge now. It's purpose. Then let's celebrate that purpose. Clara pulled up travel destinations. 2 weeks. No business, no revenge, no past. Just us. Elias looked at the screens around them. The shelter statistics showed lives being rebuilt. The foundation documents ensured it would continue. Even the Ramsey Dynamics reports showed a company transformed from greed to genuine value. You're right, he decided. The past is settled. The future is secure. He stood and pulled Clara close. Let's focus on now. Matt cleared his throat from the doorway. I'll have my team start travel arrangements. Any preferences? Somewhere we've never been, Clara suggested. A fresh start. A fresh start, Elias agreed. But not a soft one. Never that, Clara laughed. Never that. You're still you. Just with better priorities. They spent the evening planning their trip, but also reviewing the shelter's progress. Each success story, each woman who rebuilt her life, was a testament to transformation. From the ashes of betrayal, something stronger had risen. The Phoenix Gambit, Clara mused. That's what Detective Diaz called your takeover strategy. But it's more than that, isn't it? It's about rising from destruction, about using pain to fuel rebirth. For everyone except Julian and Vivian, Elias reminded her. Some people don't deserve Phoenix moments. No, Clara agreed. Some people just deserve consequences. She studied the shelter statistics. But their consequences created opportunities for others. That's a different kind of justice. Elias pulled her close. A better kind. The kind that builds instead of breaks. Together, they watched the shelter's evening routine through the security feeds. Women who had once been broken were finding strength. Children who had known fear were learning to laugh. Even Mac, ever vigilant, was smiling as he reviewed the day's reports. The Phoenix had risen, not through forgiveness or forgetting, but through transformation. Justice had been served, not just through punishment, but through creation. And in the end, that was the greatest revenge of all. Epilogue. 5 years later. The Autumn Gala for the Thorn Foundation drew Manhattan's elite to the renovated Grand Plaza. Under crystal chandeliers, donors and supporters mingled, celebrating 5 years of transforming lives through the network of women's shelters that had grown from a single mansion to 12 locations across 3 states. Clara Thorne moved through the crowd with practiced ease, her quiet confidence matching her husband's power. She just finished announcing their latest initiative, a scholarship program for shelter residents pursuing higher education. At one of the tables, Tess Bellwether, now the Foundation's program director, sat with her daughter Emma, who at 12 was already talking about becoming a lawyer like Ms. Diaz. They'd come a long way from their first days at the shelter. Tess had not only rebuilt her life, but had helped countless others do the same. Detective Isabella Diaz, recently promoted to captain, joined their table. She'd become an integral part of the Foundation's legal advocacy program, helping women navigate the justice system. Her understanding of both law and justice had proven invaluable. The stats from the DA's office are encouraging, Izzy told Tess. Conviction rates up 30% since we implemented the witness support program. Mac Riley, still Elias's right hand, but now also the Foundation's chief of security, supervised his team with characteristic thoroughness. 5 years had added gray to his temples, but hadn't diminished his vigilance. He noticed everything, including the woman watching the gala from across the street. Vivian Sterling stood in her mall uniform, having just finished her shift. 5 years of retail work had permanently erased her aristocratic posture. Her once manicured hands were worn from folding clothes and restocking shelves. She wasn't supposed to be there. The restraining order was still in effect, but sometimes she came just to look. Through the windows, she could see her ex-husband standing with Clara, their body language revealing the easy intimacy of a strong marriage. Elias had only grown more powerful over the years. Ramsey Dynamics, renamed Thorn Enterprises, had become a force for corporate responsibility, its profits funding both the Foundation and new ethical business ventures. Vivian's phone buzzed, a text from her supervisor about covering an extra shift tomorrow. She needed the money. Her studio apartment in Queens barely covered utilities, and her credit was still ruined. No one in her former social circle would even take her calls anymore. 2 blocks away, in a different direction, Julian Ramsey sat in his parked Uber between rides on the night shift. Prison had aged him 20 years, and his release hadn't brought any relief. The ankle monitor ensured he kept to his approved routes, and the restitution payments ate most of his earnings. His dating app profile got no matches. Women tended to Google potential dates, and his history was there for everyone to see. Back at the gala, Elias stood at the podium to announce the Foundation's latest expansion. 5 years ago, we made a promise. His voice carried authority earned through victory rather than inherited privilege. We promised to transform tragedy into triumph, to help women rebuild their lives after betrayal and abuse. Today, I'm pleased to announce our expansion into Chicago and Los Angeles. Applause filled the room. In the audience, success stories from the shelters sat proudly. Women who'd arrived broken had become business owners, educators, healthcare workers. Their children, once traumatized by instability, were thriving in schools and activities. The Foundation's work, Elias continued, is proof that the strongest steel is forged in the hottest fires. Every woman who rebuilds her life, every child who regains their smile, every family restored to stability, these are the true measure of success. Clara joined him at the podium. Their 3-year-old daughter Michelle settled on her hip. The child was a perfect blend of them both, Elias's analytical mind and Clara's compassionate heart already evident in her personality. Meanwhile, Vivian turned away from the window. Her shoulders slumped. Her efficiency rating at work was dropping, and she couldn't afford another demotion. The walk to the subway station took her past familiar landmarks. Restaurants she could no longer afford, shops where she'd once been a valued customer. Her tiny apartment waited, with its leaky faucet and noisy radiator. On her nightstand sat a letter from Julian, full of bitter complaints about his latest parole restrictions. They hadn't seen each other since his release. Their relationship hadn't survived their fall from grace. Julian's Uber app pinged with another ride request. Friday nights were busy, and he needed every dollar. His previous passenger had recognized him, making snide comments about that corrupt CEO who got what he deserved. He'd learned to stay silent, to endure the humiliation. His attempts to find better work had all failed. Elias's influence ensured his reputation remained toxic in the business world. Back at the gala, Mac approached Elias with his tablet. Vivian was outside again. Didn't approach, just watched. And Julian? Working his usual route. The tracking system shows him staying within boundaries. Elias nodded, unsurprised. The new shelter locations? All properties secured through shell companies. No connections traceable. Clara, overhearing, touched Elias's arm. Still protecting everyone? Always. His smile was for her alone. Speaking of protection, how's the London expansion? On schedule. Tess is flying out next month to train the new staff. Across the room, Emma was showing Izzy her latest school project, a presentation on women's legal rights. The girl who'd once hidden behind her mother now spoke with confidence, her future bright with possibilities. Captain Diaz, Elias greeted as they approached. The Foundation's legal fund has helped another 50 women this quarter. I saw the reports, Izzy replied. Your network makes prosecution possible. Women feel safe testifying when they know they're protected. Tess joined them, her professional attire a far cry from her first days at the shelter. The new job training program is at capacity. We're looking at expanding the hours. They discussed future plans, new shelters, expanded services, stronger support networks. The Foundation had become a model for similar programs nationwide. Other organizations sought their guidance, tried to replicate their success. Later that night, after the gala, Elias and Clara stood in their penthouse apartment. Michelle slept peacefully in her room, surrounded by books and dreams. Through the window, they could see the city lights, the same view Elias had once shared with Vivian, but now seen through very different eyes. Any regrets? Clara asked, though she knew the answer. About them? None. Elias's voice was firm. They chose their path. The consequences are theirs to bear. And this path? The Foundation, the shelters, all of it. This path we chose together. He drew her close. From their betrayal, we built something lasting, something meaningful. In her apartment, Vivian ate microwave dinner alone, watching entertainment news coverage of the gala. Her own face appeared briefly in an old photo. Disgraced socialite, the caption read. She quickly changed the channel. Julian's night shift continued. Each passenger reminded him of his fall. The same people he'd once looked down on now held power over his rating, his income, his survival. His ankle monitor blinked steadily, a constant reminder of his chains. The foundation's light stayed on late, shelter staff working around the clock. Women arrived seeking safety, found strength instead. Children learned to trust again. Families rebuilt from ashes of betrayal. Mac's security team maintained their vigilance. Tess prepared training materials for the London shelter. Izzy reviewed cases, finding new ways to protect vulnerable witnesses. The machine Elias had built from his revenge continued growing, strengthening, helping. In their home office, Elias and Clara reviewed plans for the next 5 years. More shelters, expanded services, stronger support networks. Their daughter slept surrounded by security and love, her future secure in ways Vivian had once taken for granted. The board meeting tomorrow, Clara reminded him. London expansion details, already prepared. Elias's efficiency hadn't diminished. The new funding structure ensures stability. They worked late into the night, building their legacy. Not of revenge, though that remained sweet, but of transformation. They'd taken betrayal's bitter ashes and forged something unbreakable. Outside, the city moved through its rhythms. Vivian turned out her lights. Another day of struggled dignity ended. Julian logged off his app, counting meager tips. Shelter residents slept safely, their dreams finally peaceful. The phoenix had risen, its wings spread wide. From one man's revenge, countless lives found redemption. Not the betrayers, their fate remained fixed, their consequences eternal. But for others, for those who deserved it, the path from darkness led to light. Elias Thorne had proven that revenge, properly executed, could build as well as destroy. His power had only grown, his influence expanded, his legacy secured. Not through forgiveness. He'd never offered that, never would, but through transformation. The night deepened. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new lives to rebuild. The Foundation's work continued, its mission clear. From the ashes of betrayal, something magnificent had risen. And somewhere in Queens, in her tiny apartment, Vivian Sterling laid awake, remembering what she'd lost. In his rented room, Julian Ramsey counted his meager earnings. Their choices had condemned them to lives of struggle, their betrayal earning eternal consequences. But in their penthouse, Elias and Clara Thorne planned tomorrow's victories. Their daughter slept safely, their mission expanded, their love deepened. They'd taken revenge's fire and forged it into purpose, proving that sometimes the greatest victory isn't in destroying enemies, but in building something they can never touch. The phoenix had risen, and would rise again with each life rebuilt, each family restored, each victory won. Not through forgiveness, but through transformation. Not through forgetting, but through building. The game was long since won, but its fruits continued growing, spreading, strengthening. Justice, Elias had proved, could build as well as break. And in the end, that was the greatest revenge of all. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.